Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are transporting you to a very specific, very rugged corner of the world.
We are.
I want you to picture the northern tip of Islay, Scotland. Now, if you know anything about Islay whiskey, you probably have a very specific scent memory triggered right now.
Oh, yeah. You're thinking heavy peat smoke, iodine, maybe a bonfire on a salty beach.
Exactly. You're thinking of the heavy hitters.
Yeah.
You know, the Laphroaigs, Lagavulins, or Ardbegs of the world.
That is the classic Islay profile, absolutely. It's the terroir that really put the island on the map.
Right. When people say Islay, they usually mean smoke.
Usually.
But today, we are talking about the outsider, the rebel. The distillery that sits on that same smoky island but, well, decided to break all the rules. We're talking about Bunnahabhain.
It's such a fascinating story.
It is. And for a long time, this place was sort of the silent giant of the island. It was industrial, it was quiet, but now it has this massive cult following precisely because it zigs when everyone else zags.
It's a really compelling case study in how going against the grain or against the expected regional style can actually create a stronger identity.
So before we get into the liquid and the history, we need to acknowledge where this intel is coming from. We are working off a massive stack of research provided by Whisky.dk.
And we should pause there for a second because the source material here is just top tier. Whisky.dk isn't, just some website. They're Denmark's largest whiskey shop.
They're huge. I was looking at the background notes. They're based in Vistrupud, near Kolding, and they have a 500 square meter showroom.
I mean, that is a lot of whiskey.
It is.
It's the kind of place founded by true enthusiasts Ulrik Bertelsen and Henrik Olsen back in 2012. And just to give you a sense of their business acumen, they've won the Gazelle Prize multiple times.
That's a big deal in Denmark, right? For high-growth companies.
A very big deal. So when they break down a distillery profile, they're doing it with this mix of business insight and genuine whiskey passion. They know what moves the market and what tastes good.
So we're in good hands. Okay, let's unpack this outsider status. Our mission today is to figure out how a distillery on the smokiest island in the world became famous for, well, not being smoky.
To understand that, you have to go back to the beginning, and I mean the very beginning, to the name itself, Bunnahabhain.
Which, let's be honest, is a bit of a mouthful if you've never seen it written down.
It is. It's Gaelic. Bunnahabhain. It translates literally to mouth of the river.
Which is a very literal description of where it sits.
Exactly. It's right at the outlet of the Margadoe River, looking out over the Sound of Islay. But you have to imagine the context of 1881 when it was founded.
Right. This wasn't just, let's build a factory.
No. This was an exercise in extreme isolation.
I think this is hard for us to grasp now. We think of remote as, losing 5G service. But in 1881, on the north tip of Islay, remote meant you were basically on the moon.
Completely. It was a logistical nightmare. It was so desolate that to make the distillery function, they couldn't just hire people.
There was nothing there.
Nothing. No roads, no houses. To build the distillery, they had to build the infrastructure of civilization first.
They had to build the world before they could build the whiskey.
Perfectly put. They built a road because there wasn't one. They built a massive pier to ship things in and out. But more than that, they had to build an entire village.
Houses for the workers, a school for the children, everything.
They created a community from scratch just to support this liquid.
That really speaks to the commitment required back then. You weren't just an employer, you were like the town planner, the mayor.
And that isolation really defined the culture there. It's a very tight-knit operation because for a century they were just cut off. They were their own little universe.
So they build this village, they get the stills running.
Right.
What happens next? Because for a long, long time, you didn't really see Bunnahabhain on store shelves as a single malt.
No, you didn't. And that's a crucial part of their history. For the vast majority of its life, Bunnahabhain was a workhorse. It joined the Highland Distilleries Company, and its main job was to provide volume for blends.
Which is the reality of Scotch history. We obsess over single malts now, but for 100 years the industry ran on blends.
Completely. And Bunnahabhain was the heart of a very famous blend called Black Bottle.
Ah, Black Bottle. That's a name that has a bit of a cult following of its own.
It does. And because the demand for those blends was so high, Bunnahabhain had to scale up. In 1963, they actually doubled their capacity.
They went from 2 stills to 4.
Yep, just to keep up with the thirst for blended Scotch. It was an industrial powerhouse, not a boutique brand.
So for decades, they're the rhythm section, not the lead singer. When does that shift? When do they step into the spotlight?
The real turning point comes much later. There was a rough patch in the early 80s, but the modern era really kicks off in 2003. That's when Burns Stewart Distillers took over.
And that's the moment they shift from being blend fodder to a serious single malt brand.
That's the one. And today they're owned by Distell, which is under the Heineken umbrella, but they've managed to keep a very independent spirit.
Okay, so that brings us to the identity crisis. Or maybe the identity triumph. Let's talk about why they're so different.
Right, because if you drive down the road to the south coast of Islay, you are getting punched in the face with peat smoke.
It's aggressive, it's polarizing. Bunnahabhain is known as the un-Islay whiskey. Did they just, run out of peat?
No, they had plenty of peat access. Historically, they focused on a different style because that's what the blenders needed. They needed something to balance out the heavy stuff.
So while the neighbors were chasing these peat monsters, Bunnahabhain became a sort of bridge.
A bridge is a perfect way to put it. It connects that salty maritime character of Islay with the fruity, sherry-heavy style you might find on the mainland.
So you get the salt of the island, but the fruit of the mainland. That allows you to taste the place, the sea air, the brine, without it being completely covered up by smoke.
Exactly. It's a hybrid. But here's where it gets really interesting. And the Whisky.dk notes were very clear on this. They aren't strictly unpeated anymore.
I saw that. Seems like they're playing both sides of the fence now.
They are. They actually run two completely distinct production tracks. Track 1 is that classic, unpeated, sherry-led style. That's the core.
But track 2?
Track 2 is a heavily peated style. We're talking 35 to 45 ppm.
Okay, hold on. For listeners who might not have a degree in chemistry, let's define ppm. Why does that number matter?
Sure. ppm is phenol parts per million. It's the measure of how smoky the barley is after it's been dried over a peat fire. To give you some context, 35 to 45 is high. That's up there with the heavyweights like Lagavulin or Lafargue.
So they are making a peat monster too.
They are, but the profile is different. It's described as more spicy and earthy rather than medicinal. Not that hospital bandage smell, more like a campfire.
But logistically, that must be a nightmare. You can't cross-contaminate.
Oh, they have to be incredibly careful. Phenols are sticky. They cling to everything.
The pipes, the mill.
Everywhere. So they store the unpeated and peated malt in completely separate silos. They treat them as totally different raw materials and schedule the production runs very carefully to ensure absolute purity.
They're essentially running two different distilleries under one roof.
That's exactly what it is.
That is dedication. Okay, let's get into the science of the spirit. Why does it taste the way it does? What is happening inside the building?
Well, it starts with the water. They pipe it in directly from the Margadale spring. It's very mineral rich, which gives a clean foundation. But the real magic and the real confusion for whiskey geeks happens in the copper.
The stills. I read that these are massive.
They're huge, some of the biggest on the island. The wash stills are about 30,000 liters, and they're very tall.
Okay, let's pause on tall. Why does the height of the still matter to the flavor in my glass?
It all comes down to something called reflux. When you boil the alcohol, the vapors rise up the neck. In a tall still, the heavier, oilier compounds struggle to get to the top. They condense and fall back down.
So only the lightest, most delicate vapors make it over.
Right. So generally speaking, tall stills equal a light floral whiskey. Think Glenmorangie.
But Bunnahabhain defies this.
It completely defies it. This is the paradox of the distillery. They have these tall stills, which should give a very light spirit, but what they produce is surprisingly oily. It has this heavy, waxy mouthfeel.
How do they do that if the copper is fighting them?
It's all in how they run the still. It's about the speed of the run and the cut, the portion they decide to keep. By running it a bit harder and taking a slightly wider cut, they manage to capture these heavy oils despite the height of the stills.
So you get the lightness from the copper, but the texture of a heavy spirit.
Precisely. It's a contradiction, but it works. And that texture is crucial because of what they do next.
The sherry connection. This is what they're famous for.
It is synonymous with the brand now. They rely very heavily on Oloroso sherry casks.
And this is where that oily spirit matters, right? If you put a light, delicate spirit into a heavy sherry cask, the wood just crushes it.
It just tastes like oak juice.
Exactly. You need a muscular spirit to stand up to that sherry influence. Because Bunnahabhain has that weight, it can handle it.
So you get that beautiful layering. The dried fruit, the nuts from the sherry, sitting on top of that coastal salty breeze.
It's a perfect balance.
Now, there's a point here that I think is really important for modern drinkers. Integrity.
Yes, this is a big deal. Bunnahabhain bottles their core range as non-chill filtered and with no added color.
We see non-chill filtered on labels, but can you break down why that actually matters? Is it just marketing?
It is definitely not just marketing. Chill filtering is a cosmetic process. Big brands cool the whiskey down to near freezing to remove fatty acids and esters, so that if you add ice to your drink, it doesn't go cloudy.
They're removing chemical compounds just so it looks pretty in a glass with ice.
That's it. But the problem is those fatty acids are flavor. They are texture. They are the mouthfeel.
So by skipping that step, Bunnahabhain preserves that natural oily character we were talking about. They're saying, we'd rather it be cloudy and tasty than clear and thin.
And the no added color part.
That just means what you see is 100% from the wood. No E150A caramel coloring to make every batch look identical. If a batch is lighter, it's lighter.
I love that. It feels more authentic. It treats the consumer like an adult.
It signals respect for the drinker, absolutely.
Okay, so we've got the history, the science, the philosophy. Let's talk about the liquid itself. What are the key bottles?
Let's start with the gateway, the 12-year-old.
This seems to be the one everyone recommends starting with.
For good reason. It's widely considered one of the best value propositions in all of Scotch. It's a mix of sherry and bourbon casks, but the sherry really sings.
Tasting notes. If I pour a dram, what am I getting?
You get dried fruit, raisins, sultanas, you get nuts, like walnuts. But then, right at the end, you get that spray of sea salt. It's 46.3% ABV, so it's robust. It's a warm hug of a whiskey.
And then if you want to level up, you go to the 18-year-old.
The 18 is darker, deeper. Think leather, old tobacco, rich, dark chocolate, polished wood. This is the reference point for what unpeated Islay whiskey can be. It's a sit by the fire and contemplate life kind of dram.
I know they have the elder statesmen, the 25, 30, 40-year-olds, but I want to ask about the ones with the tricky names.
The Gaelic tongue twisters, they love those.
Let's talk about the Stewart air.
Right. Stewyr air. It's pronounced Sturadur, means helmsman.
Okay, thanks for that. What's the deal with this one?
This is their non-age statement release. It's designed to be a sherry bomb. They can use different casks, maybe some younger, punchy ones. It's very fruity, very coastal, a bit more aggressive than the 12.
And then the smoky cousin we hinted at earlier, the Toitich Ada.
Toitich Ada. It means smoky 2 in Gaelic.
Smoky 2,
Yeah.
like a movie sequel.
Yeah, essentially. It was the sequel to an earlier release called just Toitich. This is where they flex that second production track.
So it combines that heavy peat smoke with the signature sherry sweetness.
And they nail it. It's a brilliant contrast. You get sweet smoke, spice, earth, and then that rich fruitiness. It proves they can play the peat game just as well as their neighbors.
So what does this all mean? We have a distillery that was a blend factory first and is now a single malt star. Why does Bunnahabhain matter?
I think in the bigger picture, Bunnahabhain challenges our understanding of terroir. We think Islay equals smoke, Speyside equals fruit.
We like to put things in boxes. It makes shopping easier.
We do. But Bunnahabhain proves that terroir is more nuanced. Islay isn't just about peat bogs. It's about the sea, the air, the maritime climate. You can express Islay without a peat fire.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
It broadens the definition of the region.
And I think we have to call them the silent giant of Islay. For so long, they were the backbone of the blend industry. Now they're a heavyweight champion for enthusiasts who value texture and natural presentation.
And they're modernizing. The source mentioned major upgrades in 2019, a new visitor center.
They did. They've turned themselves into a proper tourist destination. But, and this is key, they did it without sacrificing the hands-on production methods.
They didn't automate the soul out of it.
No. The stillman still has to turn the valve and decide, okay, that's the heart of the run. They've balanced modernization with tradition perfectly.
That's a hard balance to strike. All right, let's wrap this up. If you're listening and you've never tried Bunnahabhain, where should you start?
Grab the 12-year-old. It's the perfect introduction. It's sherry, it's salt, it's oil, it's affordable. It will change your mind about what Islay whiskey can be.
And if you're already a fan?
If you want to see how deep the rabbit hole goes, splurge on the 18. It's a masterclass in aging. Or, frankly, try the Toitich Ada if you want to be confused in the best possible way.
I like that. Be confused.
Absolutely. But I want to leave the listener with a thought. Bunnahabhain thrives on Islay by ignoring the island's most famous trait, peat. They broke the regional rule and succeeded.
Which raises a question.
It does. What other regional rules in whiskey are just marketing myths meant to be broken?
That is a great provocation. If Islay can be unpeated, Can Speyside be smoky? Can the lowlands be heavy?
Exactly. Question the rules, drink the whiskey.
Huge thanks to Whisky.dk for the incredible source material in this deep dive into the mouth of the river.
It was a pleasure to explore it.
Check them out if you're ever in Denmark or online. Until next time, keep exploring.